In this video, we'll give you the top waiver wire players to target going into Week 15, along with our top reactions to Week 14. I'm Jim Coventry, joined by Anthony Servino, and we are with RotoWire. Anthony, waiver wire quarterbacks, 2 quarterback league players, all 3 of these, super flex, if you will. New Orleans Saints. So Derek Carr potentially breaks his left hand. He's not going to take a snap, so he'd probably be done if that happens. Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler could be pressed into duty. Now, here's the thing. Rattler was a starter last time around, but he actually got benched at one point for Haener. Haener finished yesterday's game. I can't guarantee you which one plays. Haener would have more value because he is a very good runner in a limited spot with Chris Olave, and we don't know if Olave's coming back next week. If he does come back, Haener had a really good rapport with him. That said, Raynor or Rattler or neither.
Maybe Rattler, but either one of these quarterbacks, you're getting Washington this week. It's not the greatest matchup. You can move the football a little bit on them, but this could be one of those matchups where Dan Quinn's defense come alive.
So let's go to the next. Drew Lock. He does nothing as a passer, but he's run for 57 and 59 yards. He had a rushing touchdown against Dallas. So he's going to get you something for fantasy. And he also is a pretty good garbage time king yesterday. Didn't throw a touchdown pass, but late in the game, got some garbage yardage as well. What about Locke as an emergency starter?
I don't mind Drew Lock. And Drew Lock seems to have a little bit of rushing upside. We've seen him in his 2 starts run the ball a little bit. He even scored against Dallas. And he has some weapons. I would use Drew Lock over those Saints quarterbacks if you were in a bind.
Desmond Ridder may be in for the rest of the season if Aiden O'Connell's knee injury is as serious as the team is letting on. Remember, Gardner Minshew was already on injured reserve, so Ridder would take over. We know he's a terrible quarterback, but again, he has some running ability. The team gets the ball out quick to Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers. What about Ridder?
Ridder gets a good matchup, revenge game against the Atlanta Falcons. This defense, we know it's not the greatest in the world. They just let Sam Darnold throw for, 5 touchdowns on him. This might be the best sneaky ad of all the 3 quarterbacks or 4 quarterbacks we just discussed.
Running backs. Bucky Irving suffers a back injury, which he was coming into the game with a back injury. He had a hip injury as well. And so if he misses time, because he was ruled out of that game, Sean Tucker could move into a volume role. Now, he didn't handle a ton of volume yesterday. Rashad White, it was the Rashad White show, 70% of the snaps. But you would have to think Tucker gets a role here. And, of course, we can't forget Tucker putting up 192 scrimmage yards and 2 touchdowns on 17 touches against the Saints, who couldn't tackle in Week 6. What about Tucker?
I like Tucker. He has flashed when given the opportunity. He even scored a few weeks ago against the Giants, but that game was blown open. Not the greatest matchup against the Chargers, but I think you're right here. Rashad White, I don't see him maintaining the role all by himself because that's something he did last year. It's something that he has not done outside of this past week in 2024. So if you need a waiver wire pickup running back, you're in a bind, Sean Tucker's going to be in a solid spot for some workload.
Next, I was wrong on Isaiah Davis. I thought that it'd be Braylon L taking the lead, Isaiah Davis as the change up, and that was about it. Nope. It was a dead even timeshare. Pretty much had the same amount of touches, the same amount of snaps. Isaiah Davis did score the touchdown. Braylon did see some little action in the red zone, so he just didn't get in. But that said, Breece Hall, the team said they're not shutting him down, but he's already missed 1 game. He has a knee injury. I would assume for at least 1 more week, this running back committee is going at it. What about Davis?
Yeah, a lot of people thought this was going to be the Braylon Allen show, but Isaiah Davis was very much involved. So 13 touches, 67 yards, and that 1 touchdown early. Now you get Jacksonville. This could be a game that is dominated on the ground for the Jets. So I like Isaiah Davis a lot if Breece Hall does not play this week.
We were pushing Sincere McCormick last week, even if Alexander Madison came back, which he didn't. Him and Zamir White are still out. The way McCormick looked against Kansas City 2 weeks ago, it looks like what does the team have to lose putting him in? He's probably better than everything else they have. So now in 2 games, he has 27 rushes, 142 yards. That's way better than any production the Raiders have gotten all season. So even if Madison returns, if McCormick is still out there, I think he could be fantasy viable as a flex plus running back 2 maybe going forward, Anthony.
Yeah, maybe there's a world where, because this happened last year with Zamir White, where Zamir White looked like he could be a thing. And Sincere McCormick, he looks like he could be a thing this season. I think we know if Zamir White comes back, I think the Raiders are done with them. Even Alexander Madison, they might want to see what they have in Sincere McCormick, and not so much this week against Atlanta, but against Jacksonville and New Orleans in week 16 and 17.
Oof.
If McCormick's the guy, that is a terrific 2-game run.
Definitely could help you in the fantasy playoffs. So next, Patrick Taylor and or Israel Abanikanda. I'm going to leave Keyshawn Vaughn out. I'll explain in a minute. Isaac Guerrero injures his foot late in this game. We don't know the severity because it was like 5 minutes left in the game. It was a blowout. Well, Guerrero apparently is getting an MRI on his foot. So that said, that doesn't look good. So Patrick Taylor knows the offense. He did score a touchdown and he played yesterday. Now, Keyshawn Vaughn got a couple touches, but I imagine Abanikanda would move ahead of Vaughn pretty quickly. Here's the thing. Abanikanda may not know the offense. That could be an issue. Way more talented than either of those guys. Patrick Taylor knows the offense, so he probably is going to be involved to a degree. Thoughts there?
I mean, this backfield is jumbled right now. We thought Guerrero was going to be the guy who looked really good. He suffers the injury. Like you said, we could be looking at possibly 3 different players sharing a workload. But I also think there's a world where Shanahan wants to lean on one guy. And if he's going to lean on one, I think the one you want to pick up is Patrick Taylor.
Yeah, and just knowing the offense means a lot.
Yeah.
Shanahan's offense is not easy. It's not you walk in and you have it. And also right now they're playing without Trent Williams the last 2 weeks. And the fact that Guerrero did well in that situation, they were without their left tackle and their left guard again. And the Bears are terrible on defense, run defense at least. But still, Guerrero got credit. He had a great game. If you started him, at least you got him for that 1 week. Hopefully he shakes out healthy. But for right now, speculative ads are in order. Look, Tank Bigsby been on and off all year. He may have been dropped, all that good stuff. 18 attempts to 4 for Travis Etienne. Etienne gets the targets against the Titans. Titans are a decent run defense. Yet Bigsby goes for 62 yards. He scores a touchdown. You can't expect consistency. But again, it's probably a split backfield still between Bigsby and Etienne. Yeah.
These players played nearly similar snaps, but Bigsby dominated when it comes to touches. Now, Etienne still managed double-digit PPR points. A lot of that was receiving duty, but it seems like Bigsby, he's going to be the early down grinder, and he even found that late, a touchdown at some point in this game, late in the game. So if you want to add a running back, I don't mind Bigsby, but disclaimer, you get the Jets this week. We don't know what version of the Jets defense is going to show up.
On that note for a minute, I was in the Start Sit show yesterday, and I was getting questions about the Jets. And I said, you know what? The Jets have checked out, but they had a divisional game. And I said, you know what? Don't be surprised if the Jets show up for a divisional game, because that's what these divisional games are. These teams hate each other. And sure enough, the Jets showed up. They almost won. They had every chance to win. But like you said, otherwise, if the Jets don't have a divisional game, good luck, because I just don't think they have the will to play much otherwise. Next player, I know he may be rostered in a lot of leagues, especially any deeper leagues, but Jerome Ford, he has handled double-digit touches. He has out-snapped Nick Chubb significantly the last 2 weeks. We thought it was weird 2 weeks ago, maybe a game thing. It's 2 games in a row now. And in those 2 games, Ford's averaging 55 scrimmage yards. In an even timeshare right now, if he's available, he has value.
Yeah, I always thought that when Chubb came back, we could be seeing Ford in that old Kareem Hunt role. But it seems like Ford is in more than that. Nick Chubb is not the same player. I don't know if it's because he still needs time to recover. Maybe the offseason will do him good. Or he's 28 years old. These knee injuries are piling up, and he might never be the same version of Nick Chubb, which would be unfortunate. But right now, Jerome Ford does have fantasy value. He hasn't had double-digit PPR points since early this season. I don't love the matchup against Kansas City, but if he's going to be handling this many touches, he should be rostered somewhere.
Last running back, if you're in a deep league or if you just need to back up Kyren Williams, Blake Corum. 2 games in a row now with 8 carries. His snaps were a little lower this week than they were in week 13. But again, 8 carries, 2 games in a row, averaging 38 yards. So he's getting you a few fantasy points. If you're in a deep league, you could desperation, but nobody's on buy anymore. So there's that. But realistically, like with Kyren Williams, James Conner, a lot of these guys who normally miss time, they haven't missed any yet, and they may not. But if they do, Corum would be the guy.
Yeah, I watched Corum now 2 weeks in a row watching these games. He's getting the touches, and he looks pretty good. The only way I see Corum really getting a significant workload is if the Rams can somehow lock up a playoff spot or a division, but everything's so close right now. Corum's just a pure handcuff, but he's not a pure handcuff, not a bad pure handcuff to have, because if Kyron did miss a game down the stretch, Corum's a locked and loaded top 12 running back.
Absolutely. If you enjoy videos like this, please consider hitting the like button and subscribe to the RotoWire Fantasy Football channel on YouTube. Also, you can check out all of our fantasy football content and rankings. You can get a free 2-day trial. You don't even need a credit card. Head on over to rotowire.com/Jim. You can check out all of our sports content, rankings, articles. And if you like it, join the team. If not, just happy you took a look. Anthony, let's go to some wide receivers here. Chris Olave, the concussion, eligible to return from injured reserve. We don't know. Little snippets of interviews with him. He's in good spirits. We'll see what that turns into. But again, if he is activated, and if we don't even know it, you make a preemptive ad, he could be an immediate impact player if he plays.
Yeah, we know what Chris Olave is. We know what he can do. I don't know if he's going to be available in a lot of spots, but there is not many players on waivers this time of year to where if he comes in and gets the right amount of action in the right matchup, he can be a potential league winner in the fantasy playoffs. So do your due diligence in your league. Don't assume he's rostered. Go take a look and see if Chris Olave is there.
Yeah, leagues with no IR spots, a lot of times teams have to dump those players. And we'll talk about another player later in that same situation. So, but just remember, check your waiver wire because you never know if somebody dropped them. Ray McLeod, I know, I get it, but he's been targeted at least 6 times in 3 straight games. Last 2 games, 95 and 98 yards. Where's the love for Kyle Pitts? I don't know. It's going to Ray McLeod. McLeod has a solid PPR floor. He plays almost every snap, Anthony.
Yeah, and he's had quite a few double-digit PPR games. Kyle Pitts isn't even on a fantasy radar right now, but it looks like Ray McLeod is a significant part of this passing attack, and they're throwing a lot right now in Atlanta. You got the Raiders upcoming. This secondary, I don't think is as good as it is on paper, and Atlanta needs to win football games. So look for Ray McLeod to be involved rest of season. I like this ad a lot.
Well, you mentioned the Raiders. Corey and Bennett, their right corners, an injured reserve. Nate Hobbs, the slot corners, missed the last couple of games, and I don't know if he's trending to return or not. But even all that said, they're all there. They're not good. But, man, without them, they've been even worse. You could throw all day on them. Tim Patrick recorded at least 43 yards in Detroit's last 3 games. Now, the Thursday night game, he had 2 touchdowns. That's not going to happen with frequency. The 7 targets, not really. It's normally 3 to 4 targets in a game, and that's about it. But anyway, he is, again, 43 yards in a few games or more. Not bad for Tim Patrick.
Yeah, Patrick, remember, in Denver, he was an explosive player. Injuries kind of derailed his career, but he looks like he's emerging as a little bit of a thing. Probably more touchdown dependent, big play dependent, if anything, assuming the volume's not going to be there. But we know Detroit, even in bad matchups, they can still make plays happen. And Tim Patrick could be involved as a red zone threat if the enemy defense is trying to take out Amon-Ra St. Brown and Laporta. We saw it this past week. Patrick's going to be there.
Kendrick Bourne's on a bye this week, but he's caught 3 passes in 3 straight games. His snaps have gone up in each week. I think he was in the 64% range. So he's trending toward being a full-time outside receiver across from Kayshon Boutte. So that'll be a good thing. But in those 3 games, Bourne's averaged 46 yards coming back from the ACL. He's a good player.
Yeah, and the Patriots offense, it obviously runs a little bit better with Drake May. The wide receiver room, it's jumbled. But since coming back from injury, like you said, he's been involved at least 3 targets in every game, including 2 games of 5. So I like Kendrick Bourne.
Jamie mentioned Patrick added a touchdown since 2021. Yeah, he missed 2 straight seasons. He had an Achilles injury in training camp 1 year. He had a knee injury in ACL the next year in training camp. So, he hasn't really played since 2021. But yeah, those 2 touchdowns against Green Bay, it was a pretty cool sight to see. I was glad for the young man. And I was really sad when Denver cut him because he was really putting together like what was going to be a late age career, and I'm glad he's getting another chance. All right, Jalen McMillan has mostly been forgettable this year, but he did go 4 for 52 and 2 touchdowns against the Raiders. Again, I said Ja'Cory and Bennett and Nate Hobbs were out. There's that. But maybe the youngster just needed a little confidence. He's going to be on the field. He's playing most of the snaps. Baker Mayfield's going to throw the ball. Thoughts on McMillan?
Yeah, McMillan flashed this week. He obviously popped best game of his young career. But he had opportunities earlier this season, especially with Evans out, couldn't get anything going. Maybe with Evans back and the defense is trying to focus on him and Kate Ott, and Jalen McMillan gets loose. He got loose yesterday for a big play.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? A lot of guys, and I fade them because now you're the number one and I don't like you there. But if you're the number 3, completely different ball game. Speaking of the Buccaneers, Sterling Shepard has 6 or 7 targets in 3 straight games. And in the last 2 games, he got 42 and 63 yards. He's busy in 3 receiver sets for the Buccaneers, deep league, but he has some PPR value, Anthony.
Yeah, he's getting the volume. Like you said, 3 straight games, at least 6 targets, 2 of which with 7. And he was always a good receiver with the Giants. He wasn't a slouch. Injuries always messed up Sterling Shepard. He has a little bit of a rapport now with Baker Mayfield. This team's going to throw it no matter what. So deeper league ad, like you said, but you could do a lot worse than Sterling Shepard.
Jalen Coker of the Panthers has missed 3 weeks with a quadriceps injury. They didn't put him on IR, so you would think he's going to be close to playing this week. We'll see. But before the injury, Coker was averaging 51 yards and 6 targets. And while he's been out, David Moore has been seeing heavy targets. So Coker probably moves into an offense where there's targets for all 3 of those receivers. And he did show some ability to play. Now, however, 6'3", 208, he was playing the slot a lot. Adam Thielen lives there. So Coker's going to have to live on the outside a little bit. But again, he's been busy, Anthony.
Yeah, this offense is playing solid football. The Panthers overall is playing solid football right now. And Bryce Young looks like a completely different quarterback. I like Jalen Coker. Rest of season schedule, you got Dallas, Arizona, Tampa Bay. 3 matchups where if he gets some runs to get some opportunity, he could be a solid flex play in your fantasy lineup.
Next one, player coming off of IR, most likely practiced last week, Bub Means, New Orleans Saints. Look, they literally have nobody at wide receiver. They are putting out garbage. Well, in the last 3 games, Bub Means played before the injury between 36 and 45 yards. That's not bad. That's something. The rookie was coming on a bit. And again, if he plays this week and you're in a deeper league, I know there's no more buys, like I said earlier, but you might need help.
Yeah, the Saints are decimated, and there's going to be targets. They need bodies, and Bub Means wasn't bad when he before the injury. Coming out of it, you get Washington. I think they can move the football a little bit, but I do worry about this Dan Quinn defense overall, just potentially smothering this Saints team.
Last one, Tutu Atwell could move into a higher volume role if DeMarcus Robinson, who injured his shoulder, misses time. Now, it might not be Atwell. It could be some Jordan Whitting. It could be some Tyler Johnson. But Atwell's been playing about 30% of the snaps. He's been putting up 30 or more yards in the last 3 games. So he's getting a little bit of run here. And I do think his reliability could come in to play if DeMarcus Robinson misses time. This is a long shot play, but go ahead.
Yeah, definitely a long shot play. But this is Sean McVay. We've seen Tutu Atwell have some nice games throughout his career when given the opportunity. You get San Francisco upcoming. This defense, San Francisco, does not look the same. And I think this could be a nice spot if you're desperate, probably 16-team leagues where you could throw Tutu Atwell in there.
All right, let's go to our tight ends on the waiver wire. We got 5 or 6 of them. We'll go through these quickly for you. Get some reactions after that. Pat Freiermuth was dropped in a lot of leagues. He has at least 48 yards in 3 straight games. He's found the end zone in the last 2. Now, he did have a 7-target game in week 13. However, he's been 3 or 4 targets or 3 or 4 targets in almost every game since week 5. But that said, he's been productive lately on limited targets. Thoughts on Freiermuth?
Yeah, Freiermuth is more of a matchup play. We've seen the few times where he's had volume. He's been productive. Last week, he scores a touchdown. He's actually scored 3 out of his past 5 games. And you have spots against Philly, Baltimore, and KC. Not so much the Philly game, but the Baltimore and KC, we know all season long they've struggled against tight ends. So if you need a tight end, be proactive and stash him for week 16 and 17.
In wide receiver, Charlene was asking about Calvin Austin. We didn't cover him. He laid an egg. He goes 1 for 4 on 4 targets, 35% of the targets, of the snaps, I should say. And it was against Cleveland. He roasted them, like 3 for 78 and a touchdown when he played them prior. With George Pickens out, there was more attention to go around the other guys. So that said, Mike Williams didn't play much, only 29% of the snaps. So Calvin Austin is a player. He's going to be boom bust. He always is in play for a touchdown or a big play, but I really think he needs Pickens on the field to make that happen. And because I think, again, like Anthony said earlier, like with Jalen McMillan, if you don't have Mike Evans out there, the gravitational pull, and all of a sudden people are actually defending you, you might have a problem because you might not be that level of player. You need help. And it's okay to be Robin. Not everybody's Batman. Anything on Calvin Austin?
Yeah, I think you echoed it the right way. You know, we saw this earlier this year with DeMarcus Robinson and McMillan and even Calvin Austin this week. The Browns, they have some talent in their secondary, and they kind of erased what Pittsburgh can do on the outside without George Pickens. Plus, I don't think this is going to be a long-term injury from George Pickens. They made it seem like this is a 1 week absence.
Back to tight ends, Juwan Johnson. Now, he had a brutal matchup against the Giants, and he had a big game. 6 catches, 43 yards, or 6 targets, 43 yards. I'm off on the yardage. That was his average over the last few games. He played well, and I didn't see that coming because tight ends have not done anything against the Giants. So that's it. Since Taysom Hill's been injured, we went out during the Week 13 game. Johnson's been very productive. And again, this team lacks pass catchers. Juwan Johnson is probably their best middle of the field pass catcher.
Yeah, I like Juwan Johnson a lot. He's going to get the opportunity now. We talked about how decimated they are at wide receiver, no Taysom Hill. Juwan Johnson could be the number 2 pass catching option in this passing attack. You got Washington, Green Bay, and Vegas. Third easiest matchup for tight ends in the fantasy championship. Johnson's somebody I want to stash, even if you don't have to use him. Let's say the tight end you have is in a tough spot in week 17. You can do a lot worse than Juwan Johnson.
Daniel Bellinger, 7 targets, goes 5 for 45. Theo Johnson's on IR. Theo Johnson was getting 6 or so targets. Bellinger kind of walked into that role. It could be a 1-game thing, but Bellinger showed at least limited ability as a pass catcher in the past. The Giants are going to have to throw, and I know Drew Lock's terrible, but again, Bellinger was productive.
Yeah, it's really the Bellinger show at the tight end position. Other guys they have in their roster, they have Manhurts, more of a blocking tight end. They brought in Dulcich, which we have to monitor that one. But right now, as long as Bellinger is going to be this number 1 tight end in this offense, Drew Lock's probably going to still target him. Drew Lock has been hyper targeting the tight end position, even when Theo Johnson was there. Since I think Lock started against Dallas, it's been a lot of tight ends.
It definitely has. And you do bring up Dulcich. I at this point, this late in the season, we'll see if they get him some snaps. But I didn't even see him on the stat sheet. So I don't even think he got on the field. So, yeah, I think Bellinger should be pretty locked in. They liked him. They just like Theo Johnson better, right? Let's do one more here. Let's do Grant Calcaterra. There are 4 games Calcaterra's played in relief of Dallas Goedert. 3 of those games have been cake matchups. In those cake tight end matchups, he has at least 8 PPR points. Then the other game that he had against a tougher defense, not really so good. So Calcaterra, though, look, he's going to get a few targets. They don't throw a lot right now. They're not throwing enough. But anyway, Calcaterra.
I mean, right now, A.J. Brown isn't getting volume. The receivers, and they have stud receivers, aren't seeing volume. I don't think Calcaterra is going to see enough, barring a situation where he scores a touchdown, to do much for your fantasy team.
You know, I should have mentioned back at running back, and I didn't put him in, and I don't know why I didn't. Kendre Miller needs to be looked at. If Kendre Miller's out there, he looked good. And he got work yesterday. Alvin Kamara got 17 carries, but Kendre Miller, 26% of the snaps, 10 carries, scored a touchdown. And I should have mentioned, I did the article yesterday. I don't know why I didn't put him on there. That was a brain freeze there. Thoughts on Kendre Miller?
Listen, there is no more Bruce Allen doghouse for Kendre Miller. I think we're going to see some run for Kendre Miller. And I think you and I were both on him this offseason.
Yes.
If you watch the game, that was a powerful run inside the 5. This is just another running back who's going to continue to vulture touchdowns from Alvin Kamara, I think.
Yeah, and his
teammates Taysom do it. Now Miller.
Man.
Imagine being a Kamara fantasy manager right now.
Right. Miller's teammates did a nice job, pushed him in the end zone. Before we get to our reactions, let's see what a couple comments here. Charlene's back to Calvin Austin, 4.3 speed. Yeah, John Ross had 4.2 speed, I think. There's a lot of fast dudes. Being a polished NFL receiver and a fast dude, they don't always intersect. So sometimes you get put into a specific role. A lot of times you're a 4.3 dude. Well, you're not going to be used over the middle because you're probably smaller. And now, you know what? Top of my head, I don't know his measurements. And I should know his measurements, but I don't. But he's not a big dude. And so a lot of those guys, you're limited. You're limited to a lot of gadget plays and downfield shots.
Yep.
You're not usually all that polished receiver like Xavier Worthy. There are a lot of things they can't do with Xavier Worthy, and that's what we talked about in the preseason. Didn't Worthy run like a 4.24?
Yeah, he I think he has the record for the 40.
Yeah, so I mean, the fast dudes is great, and it helps. It helps an NFL offense often more than helps fantasy managers. NFL offense, those players are used to open up space because the safety has to occupy them because of the respect for the speed, and then it opens up a lot of underneath for other players. So that's what happens. We get that disconnect between fast dudes and then them not really being fantasy relevant. Sometimes it happens, but often, like Deshaun Jackson, he was a dude. He was a dude, man. A couple other things before we move on here. Let me see here. Yeah, Bo Jackson. Yeah, apparently, Jamie, he ran some crazy, and that's probably what it was. And he was just goofing around, I guess. But yeah, Bo Jackson, it's like Paul Bunyan stuff. I watched the 30 for 30 on ESPN. Oh, watch that show. If you can watch it, Bo Jackson was literally a mythological character. Anything on Bo Jackson before we move on?
I mean, I'm young for Bo Jackson. He was, I was a kid when Bo Jackson was popular, but obviously there was that, like you said, like that mythical aura. When you bring up Bo Jackson, you just assume he's one of the greatest athletes ever alive.
Yeah, and so that's why even if you're young, that 30 for 30 Bo Jackson, it is one that I think any sports fan would be in awe watching. All right, let's get to our reactions. Reaction number 1. The Rams topped the Bills in the shootout, 44-42. Anthony, this is a bad betting week for me. I was 0 for 3, and I've been running really well since week 5. And my line when I took the Bills in this one was, you never know which version of the Rams you're going to get. But I thought the Bills were just so much better, it wouldn't matter what version we got. Well, didn't matter because the Rams, Sean McVay cooked up a masterpiece offensively. He outcoached Sean McDermott, and he got everything he wanted accomplished on offense. It took a late touchdown for Stafford to get over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns, which you think in this game with 42 points, he had better game than that, but it's crazy. Kupp and Nakua can have these big games, but somehow Stafford ends up with like 240 and 1 touchdown in a lot of games, but PPR, Kupp and Nakua eat. But all that said, Kyron Williams, super inefficient. 29 for 87, scores 2 touchdowns. Fantasy, I love him. He gets it done. The Rams are going to be a very weird team going forward. And I wouldn't be surprised for a second coming off this big win if they don't lay an egg next week. But thoughts on the Rams?
I mean, you said it right. This was a vintage McVay game where he just had the game plan perfect, and they almost lost it down the stretch. But I don't know if this game was ever as close. Like, obviously, Josh Allen, all of his heroics, he got it within the score. I just think the Rams were the better football team on Sunday. I like you bring up how Stafford, 320-2, solid stat line. You would think, well, maybe he throws 3 or 4 touchdowns, but we see the versatility of Sean McVay where Puka Nakua gets 5 carries for 16 yards and he scores. That's where some of these hidden touchdowns are because he gets his players involved in so many other ways.
One thing, and we'll move to the Buffalo side here because honestly, the Buffalo was the more interesting side because Nakua, he gets his. We know that. Kupp gets his. It doesn't surprise us. None of us was surprised like for the main key players. The Buffalo side, in terms of the game itself, Sean McDermott, he runs a quarterback sneak at the goal line in the last 2 minutes, and they had to blow a timeout, and they would have gotten the ball back with 40 seconds, and they were trailing by 2 points. They would have gotten the ball back. And look, it was a 50-50 proposition to win it. But instead of throwing the ball in the end zone, they run it, doesn't score, and here we go. They lose the game. I know it's a game is won and lost on a lot of things, but clock management late in the game. What did you think about that?
I mean, we've seen quite a few clock management mishaps, and I think some things are analytics driven. I would not have drained the clock on a quarterback sneak. I get you have Josh Allen, but we saw Josh Allen also in this same game miss on a tush push. That tush push play, that Eagles have it down pat, and Jalen Hurts, he gets low to the ground. I think Josh Allen's a little too big for it. I think they try to get a little bit too cute and not really exploiting what Allen does best, which is being creative and throwing the football.
I'm glad you brought up that tush push. Josh Allen is a big dude. That's exactly, he's a big dude. And that is not like Jalen Hurts. It's that insane leg strength. Josh Allen doesn't have that. Not even close to that. He's just a big, lumbering dude. And he's great. And he's great. I'm not taking any shade at him there. But that ain't Jalen Hurts. You don't run you notice hardly anybody else runs a tush push because Jalen Hurts has an insane set of drive in that legs of his. So, yeah, it was just foolish to do that. I get if you're trying to surprise somebody, but once you're lining up for that, people know it's coming. If you don't have the goods, good luck. All right. James Cook lays an egg here. And the reason is they got down double-digit points really the second quarter on. He was game scripted out. It was a great matchup for him. 6 carries, 20 yards, only 2 targets, catches them for 9 yards. So Cook lays an egg. It was nice to see Amari Cooper get involved. What I didn't like was he only played 53% of the snaps again. They won't give him more than that. 14 targets. So he was busy. 6 for 95. Shakir, great speed, breaking that touchdown when he split 2 defenders. So he goes 5 for $106 and a touchdown. Mac Hollins continues to fill the stat sheet up. 57 and a touchdown because Keon Coleman was out again, 3rd straight game out. Kincaid missed another game. But before all of these players, this was a big loss for Buffalo because they had to catch the Chiefs. Now they're 2 games back on the Chiefs, and there's not a lot of football left, Anthony.
No, it was crucial. They really needed Kansas City after Buffalo lost. They really needed KC to lose. Obviously, that did not happen, and that's just another game ahead. So I think Buffalo, if they have any shot, they have to hope Kansas City lose, and I think Buffalo needs to win out. So this was a crucial loss for Buffalo and a crucial win for the Rams to stay in the playoff hunt and the NFC West hunt.
Yeah, now the Rams are a game back, but that was a big, big win for them. I do want to take a moment to shout out Josh Allen. I mean, again, it was a chase game. They don't have a lot of those. Buffalo is not in these games that are like way behind. They were here 342-3 through the air, 82-3 at touchdowns on the ground, 6 touchdowns. The only thing he didn't do is throw a touchdown to himself like he did last week. What an incredible, incredible game. Josh Allen single-handedly may have won some fantasy games for people getting him in the fantasy playoffs, Anthony.
Yeah, and I was one, and I probably did it on this show, where I was criticizing Josh Allen early, had a few duds going into week 6, 3 out of 5 games, under 16 fantasy points. I know game script play, Buffalo was blowing him out. Since then, Josh Allen, he's been well into the 20 PPR points week in and week out since week 6. I don't think there's any more question that Josh Allen should be the #1 fantasy quarterback until we see any kind of dip in production. Like, I'm done doubting this guy. I'm done.
Yeah, done. It's been incredible. Charlene had a note earlier. Earl Campbell, he's my favorite player of all time. Anthony's, he's way before your time. He played in the 70s.
NFL films, man. I got some NFL history in me thanks to that.
Yeah, Earl Campbell. You know what? The thing that kept him from a Super Bowl was he was at his best during the Steelers dynasty days. They got him in the playoffs a couple times. There was no instant replay, and there was a play where the Houston Oilers had what would have been a touchdown, Mike Renfro, and he got his foot in, and replay wasn't a thing. And yeah, they may have had a chance to get that at Super Bowl. Sad, but Earl Campbell was one of the best running backs in NFL history. Like Anthony said, go on YouTube, NFL films or something, look up Earl Campbell, and if you want to see a power runner, that's a power runner. Derrick Henry is a bad man, but he's no Earl Campbell. Earl Campbell would take on everybody and just run them over. All right, reaction number 2. The Vikings moved to 11-2, blowing out the Falcons 42-21. Now, here is the odd thing, Anthony. Going into this game, I said, look, Sam Darnold's easy to figure out. When he doesn't get pressured, he's great. He's got a great offense around him. He was sacked 4 times. The Atlanta sent some extra heat. Now, it didn't get home all the time, but even on a couple of those plays with heat, Darnold did a nice job in the pocket. We can't count on that week to week, but Darnold does go off. 347 and 5 touchdowns. And most of that production goes to Jefferson and Addison. 132 and 2 for Jefferson, a little better for Addison. 1 more yard, 133, and 3 touchdowns. Addison had 12 targets to 7 for Jefferson. I'm still frustrated that Justin Jefferson is rarely seeing double-digit targets, but the team's 11 and 2, and it's about winning. It's not about fantasy for them. So, but right now, Jordan Addison, look, he may not have a big game every week, but man, how do you not rate him as a wide receiver too?
Yeah, he's starting to come on late in the season. And maybe it's because Justin Jefferson commands so much attention that Jordan Addison, and we've even seen Jordan Naylor get loose a little bit. You also have Hawkinson. I think that explains why Justin Jefferson isn't seeing more volume. But when it comes to Jordan Addison, he's a legitimate receiver. He's a first round pedigree. I think it was the first receiver taken off the board 2 years ago. And Sam Darnold, I get the name attached to Sam Darnold and the history, but you have this much talent around him. I don't know if Minnesota should be looking elsewhere at quarterback. It works right now, and I think this offseason, they need to keep him in-house. Because if Sam Darnold isn't going, like you can't just replace this type of production.
It's just that they drafted J.J. McCarthy, and he was their guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they saw from him before his injury either. But yeah, if they're attached to him, yeah, it's a good question, because if you have a guy on a rookie contract, it's a cheat code. I know, but you're right. You're right. I mean, if they're gonna go 13 and 4 or 14 and 3, it's kind of hard to say let's let the quarterback go, right?
Because we never seen this kid in the field either. Right? That's gonna be a big offseason talking point.
Look, Greg Cosell of NFL Films does not think J.J. McCarthy was even close to being ready for the NFL. Not that he would never be, but he saw him as a project. And that means he missed his rookie year. So I'm not sold on him. Interesting. Not much on the Minnesota side. Bijan Robinson gets it done. Now, Minnesota have been great at stopping outside zone, and that's pretty much all the Falcons run. Robinson goes 22 for 92 and a touchdown, only 2 catches for 9 yards. Minnesota has been very tough on receiving backs all year, but you take that. Drake London gets a floor game, goes 5 for 70. Mooney's the one. I thought this was a bad matchup for Mooney, because I thought when the blitz looks came, I thought it was going to be Kirk Cousins getting the ball out quickly. But in the early part of the game, Mooney had 3 for 101. And then he goes to the 142 by the end of the game. So Mooney surprised me, and I felt bad and sit because I did tell people I was not advocating him at all. But Kirk Cousins did enough. One of the interceptions, it was typical Brian Flores defense. The people were dropping out of nowhere, didn't see it, and you don't see him. That's the whole point of the disguise defense. But otherwise, he goes for 344, doesn't throw a touchdown, 2 picks, but he did enough. And my mind, and Raheem Morris already said he's our guy, but Cousins, I would not bench him after that game. Anything, Anthony?
No, not at all. I think you stick with Cousins as long as you're in a playoff race, and they're going to be in it down to week 18.
Reaction number 3. The Dolphins keep their faint playoffs hopes alive. 32-26 over the Jets in overtime. Anthony, I saw a graphic on the screen. Apparently, it said that had the Dolphins lost, they would have been eliminated from playoff contention. Thought that was interesting. But I looked at the records and I knew they were in a bit of trouble, but it was that dire for them. Not that they're going to make it, but hey, it's the NFL. A lot of crazy stuff happens. What I thought the Dolphins finally did, and I don't know why they chose this week to do it, but they finally ran the passing attack through Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. It's the dumbest thing ever why they didn't do that from week 1 on, but they didn't. 14 targets to Hill. 115 and a touchdown. Not a great game for Tyreek Hill's standards, but great. Jalen Waddle, 12 targets, 9 for 99. He catches a 2-point conversion. That's the way it works. Now, if you were a Jonnu Smith investor and you didn't watch the game, at the end of regulation, Jonnu Smith had a goose egg. Mm-hmm. In overtime, it's all Jonnu Smith. 3 for 44 and a touchdown. So if you started Jonnu Smith, you got yourself 13.4 PPR points. Just don't look at how he got them. But that said, Anthony, if this offense is going to finally do what they should have done all along, which is Hill and Waddle and everything else is an afterthought, the Devon Achane, 6 for 45 through the air. Running, don't get much from him, not even 2 yards a carry. But obviously Achane's going to be fine. But do you think the Dolphins now finally woke up and said, well, we got to use these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. And Tua's been playing good, but we are starting to see him cook now. These wide receivers, like last year, they were so involved. The offense ran through them. For some reason this year, the offense tried to run through Achane. Everybody can eat when this Mike McDaniel offense is cooking. Yes, we saw Tua and Waddle dominate. Achane still got his, especially for his fantasy managers. And I think because everyone was so focused on those 3 players, it opened up the Miami Dolphins to use Jonnu in overtime to pick up the win.
Very quick on the New York Jets side. I told people Garrett Wilson at starts and I go, look, he's a boom bust play because he's Garrett Wilson. And he's had three big games out of 4. He goes 7 for $114. Devontae Adams, 9 for 109 and a touchdown. Look, you start these guys. If they have bad games, you live with it because they're going to have bad games. But they could be very strong performers. Anything quick on those 2?
I mean, it's the Jets here. Their season's done, and I think what they're playing for right now is whatever pride they have left until it's over.
We'll do one last reaction. Let's do reaction number 4 right now. The Chiefs extend their lead for the number 1 seed with a 19-17 win. And if you didn't watch the game, they were losing. They drove into field goal range, as Patrick Mahomes always does. But they got Matthew Wright as the kicker because Harrison Butker won't come back till at least next week. And it looks like a nice, easy chippy. It's going toward the upright. It's going toward the upright. It nicks it, and it kicks in. They win the game. So there's probably, top of my head, 6 games that the Chiefs have had a crazy end to it. What do you think?
I mean, you would think at some point the luck is going to run out, but I was told growing up, I'd rather be lucky than good. And we've seen it with the Patriots dynasty. They've had a lot of balls bounce their way. We're seeing the same thing now with Kansas City in their run. A lot of things go their way. That's just the way sports work sometimes. Do I think it could potentially hurt them at some point? Yes, but until it does, you have to keep, or I'm going to keep back in Kansas City.
On the other side of the ball, look, the Chargers have been a great story. When they lost J.K. Dobbins, they do not have a credible running game. Yards per carry, okay. Kamani Vidal, 8 for 34, fine. They don't have a sustaining rushing attack. It is that simple. And when you have that, and now Ladd McConkey was out, and yeah, they put together a couple nice scoring drives. Justin Herbert's a superstar. There's no question he's a superstar. But this offense right now, if they play any good defense without J.K. Dobbins, I just don't think they have enough to get it done, Anthony.
Yeah, they've looked one-dimensional, and we started seeing that in that Ravens game where they couldn't get anything going, and now how many multiple quarters now this offense has not looked right. The one bright spot, if anything, Will Dissly going out. We never like to see injuries. Stone Smart, the tight end, 3 for 54 on 3 targets. He looks like he could add some of a field stretching tight end to this team.
Those were Dissly's fantasy points. I told people to start, and I felt bad. Yeah, because Dissly, I mean, really, I think you literally could take those numbers, and because Dissly's been running those routes. Yeah. And you literally could have said Dissly goes 5 for 73. The injury, yeah, that hurts. But Stone Smart is a good player. I've seen him since last year. The dude can play some football. Last thing before we get out, Keith, there's a question about Garendo got you in the playoffs. Chance he plays Thursday. Really, it's the MRI. I mean, right? I mean, look, I'm not in the house. I don't know how bad the foot is, but if it's enough for an MRI, I'd put his chances on 30% tops. Yeah. And obviously, if the imaging shows anything, shut down for a while. Anthony?
I mean, it's a short week, and he did not finish the game. I am planning for life without Garendo, at least for this week.
All right, everybody, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Back on Wednesday, we'll go through all of the NFL game previews for the weekend. Anthony, you want to tell everybody what we got going on some of our social media platforms?
Yeah, we have our videos dropping on TikTok and the Fantasy Football YouTube channel or Shorts. And, of course, we have our Sneaky Starts videos and just videos, content churning out on this channel. And again, Twitter and TikTok all week long to help you prepare to win the fantasy playoffs.
All right, remember to give Anthony a follow at The Real NFL Guru. You can catch me over at Jim Coventry NFL on the X. Everybody have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.